not much of a race, was it? It was as if, Usain Bolt decided to take place at the dad's race in my kids' primary school. He's pretty much there, bar the formalities. I mean, he has to go through the process of kissing hands with the king and so on, and we're told that will take place on July 20th. But given now it's virtually mathematically impossible for him to be stopped, he is pretty much our Prime Minister in waiting.
So Labour leader next Friday, Prime Minister on Monday. What does day one look like, do you think, for the Burnham government?
Well, traditionally, incoming prime ministers tend not to unveil their top team until they're actually through the door at number 10. So I think that's the main thing that everyone will be looking for. Who will he appoint to his cabinet? Who will he appoint to that big job in the Treasury? Who will be his chancellor? And then I think he'll want to speak a bit about his vision. And for me, that involves two kind of almost competing strains. Will he have some continuity because he doesn't want to frighten those bond markets? Will he do something big to kind of shake things up, to deliver that change that voters felt that Keir Starmer hadn't delivered, having promised to? Now, some of his top team have been out talking this week. We've heard from Louise Hay, who's one of his sort of allies, and from Lucy Powell, and both of them have said, perhaps a bit surprisingly, that this planning has been going on for about a year now. So hopefully Burnham will have some answers to those questions.
Yes, I think that's really interesting. That she actually even sort of went further, saying that Andy Burnham has run for Prime Minister and run for the leadership of the Labour Party twice before. And so actually he's been thinking about leading the country for a long time, which I thought was also sort of interesting. In terms of the policies that markets are going to be most interested to understand and what might be the challenges, I suppose, for Burnham. Treasury, what happens with the Treasury, what happens with welfare, what happens with tax policy, and also how fast all of this is going to happen and how radical it's going to be. I mean, got to be said that next Friday, schools are going on holiday and Parliament is in recess. So there's going to be a kind of strange summer before we then get to the Labour Party conference. And after that, it'll come round fast, but there'll be a budget.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just on that particular issue of the Treasury, we did have a hint because Lou Hay said, who had written a pamphlet calling for the Treasury to be broken up, she said that she thought that big kind of changes to the machinery of government would not be appropriate, given that at most Andy Burnham has 3 years before he must have a general election. And she was sort of saying that it would be a bit of a sideshow to do that kind of thing and a bit of a distraction when they've got other things to do. So we think the Treasury would remain in place. But she continued to say she felt it was too powerful and that power should be taken away. And we have heard, one of the things that Andy Burnham has spoken about is his wish to devolve government, to create this Downing Street in the north. And I wonder if some of those Treasury functions will be put into the north or also into the Prime Minister's office, which a lot of people around Andy Burnham and generally a lot of political experts have said that Downing Street is underpowered compared to the offices of other leaders of G8 countries, and that they might want to beef things up there. But I think you're right. I mean, as I say, there's this constant tension that's going to be there for Andy Burnham of trying to do big, meaningful, impactful things while not kind of upsetting the apple cart, upsetting the markets, going into a very difficult budget where still we haven't got much of a clue of how he's going to make the sums add up when you have pressures such as the defence budget, which we've all been talking about quite a lot in the last couple of months. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, events and so on. Two further comments that I would make. One is that Burnham may has, according to all the evidence, two very powerful women now at the centre of, his team, which I think is noteworthy given how difficult Labour have found actually putting women in positions of power. And also on Nigel Farage, I know you've written lots of columns about it, but the last few days have really been dominated by Count Binface and Farage. And is that going to get bigger over the summer, or do you think it'll fade away as we think about Andy Burnham? Yeah, well, to answer your first question first, I think Labour has had something of a woman problem. It remains a disgrace that the party has never had a female leader, let alone a prime minister. This is meant to be a progressive left-wing party, yet they don't seem to manage to achieve achieve this kind of final breakthrough the glass ceiling. Now, if you look at Keir Starmer's cabinets, you might say, well, hang on, there was equality there was the first female chancellor, but women serving in that cabinet and female MPs definitely felt that they weren't valued, that they were often briefed against in quite nasty ways, that they were kept out of the most important conversations. For example, would Peter Mandelson have been appointed, that's Jeffrey Epstein's friend, to be the US ambassador if a woman had been one of those decision makers? I would say probably not. So, yeah, really interesting that Andy Burnham's got these two powerful women in the form of Lucy Powell and Lou Hay at his side. Second question, you are absolutely right. Nigel Farage seems to be having a terrible summer. He's launched this by-election which he billed as being the people versus the establishment. The only trouble for him is that it slightly backfired because he's kind of become a bit of a figure of fun. There's nothing worse in politics than being laughed at. You can almost cope with being disliked as long as you're not a laughingstock. So there's all that. And then we hear this morning that the police have been investigating some of Reform UK's finances. Now, just to throw something, really another stone into the pond, what could happen now is, will Andy Burnham think, well, hang on a second, I've never been so powerful, Reform's never been so weak, is this the moment to call a general election?
Wow.
I think that's what's going to be obsessing Westminster for the next couple of months.
Do you think we'll see one this year, yes or no?
My guess would be that he wouldn't want to do it, because I think he will want to have get some things done before he shakes the kaleidoscope, as it were. But, it'll be tempting to him if Nigel Farage loses that by-election, or if he's expelled from the Commons and then has another by-election which he then might lose. It would be tempting for him, particularly when the Conservatives, while doing better, still haven't recovered themselves.